All right, here's our continuation of Unit 1, or actually, sorry, Unit 2, Chapter 1 of the Complete Idiot's Guide to Music History. So, when we left off with the first video, we had talked about the developments of the music, how it went from ancient or prehistoric music into ancient music. So, now we're going to start talking about how we know some of the stuff that we know, or how we are able to draw the conclusions that we're able to draw. And we owe much of this to archaeological and anthropological findings, okay? Because, especially this prehistoric music, we don't have written record that it existed. Unlike ancient music, where we're finding more and more records that it existed, prehistoric music's a little bit harder. Again, that's why we call it prehistoric. There's just not written record to support it. But archaeologists and anthropologists help us to know that this music existed because they can find the evidence of it. We have cave drawings that show people doing musical things, be it playing drums, maybe playing some sort of stringed instrument or a flute or whatever it may be. And we also have found these instruments. So they'll find a piece of bone with holes drilled in it at regular intervals. And they will find drums, or what remains of drums, sticks and things like that, which maybe to the casual observer you don't recognize what it is, but to the trained eye it's like, oh yeah, that's a musical instrument. They were using that for some sort of religious purpose, whatever it may be. And then we also have our oral tradition that keeps a lot of these things alive. And when we get to the ancient world, we have written stories that have been passed down as well. So in the prehistoric times, instruments would have been very simple. The human voice being the primary thing. Sticks and stones. The first thing babies learn how to do is make noise with their mouths. Then they learn how to hit things. So that's just human nature. We hit things and we make sounds. And then the more developed they got, the more they started experimenting with other ways to create sounds. So that's when we start getting our bone flutes and pipes and things like that. And it's really amazing to me that the arc of evolution when it comes to instruments, how we went from the human voice, which is the first instrument, to these very complex pieces of equipment we have today. If you look at the piano, and I forget how many moving parts are in a piano, but it is really a feat of engineering and creativity. It is just amazing, and how we went from one point to the other in really a relatively short amount of time. All right, so here we go. Here's some bone flutes. They may not look like much to you, but I'm gonna draw on here just a little bit. But notice how evenly spaced these holes are. How were these people measuring so accurately? And they knew that if I held this hole down and maybe this hole down, I would get one pitch. Or if I were to hold that hole and this hole, whatever it may be, I could create different pitches. So they were very masterful individuals at creating these instruments. Okay, here's some cave painting examples for you. So, do I know what these people are doing necessarily? No, but they definitely look like they're dancing. So, they got this crazy leg movement. This one's running away. Maybe the music isn't so good, but they have what appear to be some sort of instruments in their hands, some sticks. They're apparently hearing something. I'm not sure what cave this came out of. Important composers from this time period, there aren't any. So prehistoric music, nobody's putting their name on it. Even in ancient times, we don't really know who was composing music. For whatever reason, names weren't put on there. Maybe religious reasons, maybe a servitude reason, whatever it may be. We just don't know a lot of composers from that time. So you're not going to be tested over any composers from that time. Now let's talk about where it's happening. So we do have this East versus West. It's kind of like the East Coast versus West Coast of the 90s rap battles. Wars are fought and won over culture, and music is a part of culture. But we've got Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece in the West, and we have China and India in the East. And Mesopotamia kind of bridges the two. If you're familiar with that region, it's kind of in between. So, but we would consider it Western style music. And the ancient music, again, it begins when a society is able to read and write. And we designate it in music world by designating the moment when we were able to create notes and scales that could be transmitted and handed down. And it's largely isolated because, I mean, there were traveling traders, and we know that cultures kind of mingled with one another. But Egyptian music had a distinct sound. Mesopotamian music had a distinct sound. Greece had a distinct sound. China has a very distinct sound still, and India. So that's where we're actually going to stop this presentation today, or I keep saying today. Right now, this is where we're going to stop this presentation. So this is number 2. The next one, we're going to pick up with the music in Egypt, and we're going to kind of go through these regions and talk about the music that you can hear there. All right, so until the next time, have a great one.